Welcome to the Transform Sales Podcast, where forward-thinking business leaders come to share their experiences and ideas, learn from each other, and amplify their results together.
Hey guys, what's up? Amir Reiter here with the Transform Sales Podcast. I got my guest and good friend, VP of Sales at Inside Sales Solutions, Seth Kinney. Seth, what's up, man? How are you?
Great to see you, Amir. Long time.
Long time. So me and Seth known each other for almost 7 years now, or something like that. Through multiple, well, not multiple, two organizations, but Inside Sales Group has been your home for the last 5 years?
Inside Sales Solutions, just about 4 years now at this point.
Yeah. Awesome. So you're definitely a seasoned vet, because I know I've worked with you in the outbound sales community for quite some time. For those of you that are listening for the first time, or new listeners or old listeners, what we like to do is we like to ask experts about the real deal, Holyfield of what mistakes buyers make when selecting an agency and what mistakes they make when working with an agency, in the hopes of buyers listening, learning, and self-identifying common mistakes that might actually help hurt them from getting the results that they want. But before we get into that, I'd love to know, how did you get into this sales, B2B sales service business to begin with? What was the journey to get there?
It's kind of an interesting one. So I've kind of always been in sales my entire career, from an 18-year-old kid, right, fresh out of high school. My first job was selling long distance for Sprint, right, and doing this in a B2B fashion, and turned that into an insurance career, which I spent about 10 years working at Geico Auto Insurance. This was a progression, from customer service through sales all the way into eventually being a sales trainer. And I did this corporate inside sales training gig for roughly 9 years before moving into outsourced sales and specifically supporting SaaS and IT service-based companies. And then again, progressed through the ranks there as well. Started as an SDR myself, moved up into account management, moved up into direct, sort of a director role and managing multiple accounts, and then grew into a VP of sales role and have been doing it ever since. So been in the industry now for just under a decade. Been with multiple agencies prior to Inside Sales Solutions, so I've seen it done a lot of different ways, some good, some not so good, and I'm excited to talk about it today. So
that's good. So you were a sales expert as you broke into the industry, and then you actually worked, did I hear you correctly, as a sales trainer?
I did.
Okay, so that's unique. You're the first.
I did.
You're the first guest I have spoken to that has experience as a sales trainer. Which is,
it's kind of a weird progression, right? You wouldn't normally see that going that way, but yeah, I spent about 4.5 years as a sales trainer for Geico Auto Insurance.
No, that's great. I'm sure you learned a lot there, because they're a big corporate money making machine, and they hit forecast every year, over and over again, which is awesome. Well, this is great. I'm excited. Where are you calling from today? By the way, you're in Tampa. I see you got the
just outside of Tampa.
So you got the Buccaneer shirt on.
Huge Bucks fan. Let's go Bucks. We made the playoffs. We're excited. If you're not a Bucks fan, you should be.
But, I like Tom Brady. Yeah. He's a winner, so I follow winners around and learn from them. So yeah, I guess I'm a Bucks fan now. So let's talk about we'll take it. The mistakes that are just repetitive, right? And obviously there's two different kinds of mistakes, right? There's mistakes that hurt your ability to close a deal, and mistakes that affect the buyer from buying the right service, right? So that's the kind of the mistake I want to focus in on. But what have you seen over the past 10 plus years, this kind of repeating theme where buyers are looking for a B2B lead gen company and they're just making mistakes that just affect their performance? Anything that stands out to you that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, I think there's a few. One of the probably strongest areas that I see here is not giving them enough to go off of, right? You're sort of keeping your agency at an arm's length, sort of taking this whole you're the expert, you figure it out type of mentality and approach, which is true, right? And in theory, you would think, hey, I'm hiring these guys for a reason, but they're not going to know the intimate details that are happening inside of your organization, the way that you would approach, for instance, a competitor or a latent buyer or somebody that's just not ready for what you do yet. They're not going to hear that from anybody other than you accurately. And I think customers that come into it with that mindset or that idea of, hey, I'm just going to set it and forget it, sure, there's a time and a place for that when you've been working with an agency for over 90 days and they've got it figured out, and you can be confident that they know what they're doing. That's fine, but up until that point, it really does need to be a collaboration between both companies. It can't be a crockpot approach in the first 90 days.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other mistakes that they're making? Like are they? Do you see people kind of leading with price, trying to negotiate things that they don't get? Like what else I got? What
Yeah, I
else do
would
you
say
see?
price. I would also say probably expectation, like level of qualification being probably a big primary focus. I think there's a bit of a perception that you're able to uncover, 15 different qualifiers in a sales dev conversation. It just doesn't happen that way. You haven't earned the right to ask some of those deeper level rapport building questions until you get past that first conversation. So I think for a lot of customers coming into this, if you've started to explore it, right, I'm conscious of the fact that a lot of agencies will say what they want you to hear in the buying process without actually having the vetted process behind it to say here's why we're saying that, right? And I think that's the half the battle, right? If you're out there looking for an agency, it's first off knowing what's realistic. Can we really get these qualifiers answered on the phone live, or are we
Mm-hmm.
just going to be looking at a boilerplate template every time we get a meeting request that comes through? But secondly, can we do something with less, right? Does it really need all this level of qualification? Or can we start with something softer and work our way from there to really make sure we're not alienating groups of people as well? And I think as long as you're answering those two questions, you're going to end up in a good spot. You're going to end up in a good place.
That makes sense. When it comes to hiring an agency, have you ever had customers? Do you feel like customers tend to want to hear what they want to hear, and do you tend to hear that like truthful responses that are, I would say, taken as negative because they're not what people want to hear, turn off buyers? So there's a tendency to like say yes to them because there's this common thing that where if you say, hey, no, you're doing a market validation campaign and this is what you should expect, that it might turn them off and they might go to another agency. So there's kind of like this fear of being honest with buyers, fear of
I
losing
think
deals.
that I could see that happening in some agencies. It's certainly, if you're a specific agency that only does one style of delivery, then yes, that would probably be a challenge. Um, most of your more mature agencies that are doing multiple delivery mechanisms, they don't really have that same challenge because they're going to take a consultative approach right out of the gate, and whatever method or approach that makes the most sense for that customer coming in, they're going to be able to prescribe that without the fear of having to tell them no or go somewhere else, right? Because they're going to have something there that they can offer. I think that's probably where you're going to see that more often than not, is with those agencies that really just don't have the capabilities to do those other styles of sales development.
So the more mature agencies tend to have like their product line scoped out, basically, where the other ones are more doing products scope creep, right? They're kind of saying yes to people that aren't perfect fits, and that leads to just
Well,
the.
that's what I mean. I think if you look at our industry, you've really got three primary modes of delivery. You've got your dedicated models, which are per head count, they're retainer based. It's one resource for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. You've got your performance based models, which are going to be your pay per meeting.
Mhm.
And this is all different shapes and sizes, of course. You've got things like event work and stuff like this. And then you've got your point solutions, which are either going to be email, social media, phone only, these types of one channel only style campaigns. And they're all slightly different. Some agencies will fall in one or multiple of these buckets. The challenge is if you're that agency that only offers a dedicated model and somebody comes to you looking for a event-based program, well, then what are you going to sell them? You're going to sell them a dedicated only model. If they come to you and they're looking for target account outbound net new penetration, where it should really be a performance-based approach, what are you going to sell them? You're going to sell them a dedicated model because that's all you have to offer, right? So everybody gets mashed into this one box, and then they're unfortunately not happy with the results on the back end because we weren't really giving them the right prescription for what they were coming to the table with in the first place. So I think that's where a lot of the unfortunate disconnect happens with prospects or customers that are unhappy with their vendor of choice and who they've selected to work with.
Yeah, it's almost like going to like a general specialist doctor, and you always get referred out to like the specialist, and
100%.
it bothers you at the time because you're like, I just want this medicine now, but in reality, it's done because there's a specialist, and it's almost as if there's no referral kind of specialist mechanism in sales agencies. So the tendency is to treat the patient with what you have, right? Which makes a lot of sense. What typically happens to buyers like that? Do they end up like buying from you guys and not being happy? Do they end up not buying from you? Like what's the tendal? What is the what happens to buyers that don't heed these warnings and move forward?
Well, it's a good question. I think it depends because, obviously we see it from both sides. We see it from the side of we've used other agencies before and here was our experience and here's what happened. And then we see it from our own experience of, okay, we brought this customer in and we used what we were describing as their best mode of delivery. And this was the result. So I would say, there's always going to be this point of leveling expectations, right? You might think, hey, we can get to this number of meetings per month on a monthly run rate, but it's just not an option with what you have in terms of target accounts and with your market awareness and where you're at. Maybe that number, that top end number, is just not reasonable. Well, then of course, regardless of what method of delivery you use to get there, you're still going to be underwhelmed with those results, right? But I think as long as you're checking the right boxes, it's better to go down that prescriptive approach and know that the method of delivery makes the most sense for you than it is to sort of just walk into it thinking, "Hey, I've got all my boxes checked," and then you just don't know, right? Because that is the challenge that I think most customers face when they select an agency is waiting for that 90-day window to go, did it work? Did it not work? We don't really know until we get to that 90, 120-day window and really can make a decision from there. So I would say, most customers walking into it, they're probably not going to have a great experience. If you walk into that agency that only does dedicated, for instance, and you're looking for a performance based, high velocity, lots of at bats for my team, you're going to be underwhelmed. But the same is true in reverse. If you're going to that performance based agency and you're looking for deep level qualification, I want them joined at the hip with my sales team, I want them putting everything back into my CRM, you're also going to be underwhelmed. So it does take this sort of
Take the
prescriptive
time
approach
to
to
know the
look at
campaign you're looking to
exactly.
launch. Self-examine yourself and your own business as much as you're examining the agency to match to. Right? You need a
Exactly.
lot
And
of
you have to be honest with
introspection.
yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah, you have to be honest with yourself too and go, okay, am I asking for the unbelievably unrealistic to happen? Because if the answer is yes to that, then I'm probably going to be underwhelmed, right? And
yeah.
that's the thing is you have to sort of look at it with a set of realistic eyes and be honest with yourself.
Yeah, that makes sense, and I appreciate that. What about mistakes that buyers make when working with you? What's the common mistake you see that is just repeating over and over again? Now that they engaged you, they trust you, you're starting to working. I'm like, you even said 90 days, right? And to me, it's like it's like almost like one have this knee jerk reaction and be like a pilot's 90 days. But like, is that really the sweet spot? Like it's kind of a variable on their program, right? Like
It is.
yeah. So it's just we're saying these words,
Yeah.
but where what mistakes do buyers make when working with you, and what is that sweet spot that you see from a time perspective for somebody to be just happy with a program's execution?
I would say I'm going to answer those in reverse. You should start to see positive indicators within the first 30 days.
Yeah,
Within the first 30 days, you should already be saying to yourself, okay, this looks like it's moving in the right direction. I wouldn't necessarily change anything, but let's keep an eye on it and see how it goes. By day 90, this should be solid. You should be seeing your regular run rates month over month by day 90.
yeah.
All the bugs should be worked out, all the wrinkles ironed out, etc. But I would say within the first 30 days, 30 to 45 days, you're going to already see the right indicators to know if this is working, if it's a successful engagement or not. You should know that within the first 30 to 45 days. The other part to that, as you're thinking about what common mistakes are happening, to answer the other part of your question, it's not giving the agency enough to go off of. For instance, I come to you, Amir, we really want 100 meetings a month, and here's 300 accounts to get there. It's not going to work, right? We all know that multiplier, you're going to need enough data to go after in order to
Yeah,
to
like
hit
data
that
is a
sort of velocity.
multi-billion-dollar industry, and sometimes
Yes,
leaders think they're going to hire an agency not only to solve their manpower work, solve their process work, but also bring data, which typically sells for as much as an agency program separately, right? Like if you're going to go buy the data, it's probably the
exactly.
same price per month as hiring the person, and I don't know, it's that tendency to want all in one that actually hurts their performance, which makes sense. I'd push back and say I think month 4 is critical. 4, 5, and 6. That's just
I'd
what
agree.
I've seen. But I know you guys have a tight. I appreciate you saying even less. I would say 4 to 6. But what mistakes do you think they make that like really affect them? Besides that, is is there anything else that they're doing where they're like not communicating with you? They're just waiting till the 90-day mark to be like, did this work or did not? Like, what are your best customers doing? And by best, I mean getting results, because you can't really be a best customer in sales unless you're getting results, right? And what did the worst customers do?
Yeah, I think, when we look at some of our best customers, they're very communicative. We're constantly meeting. We're getting feedback, good, bad, and ugly at all times, right? We've got somebody dedicated on their side that can answer questions on the fly, that knows the product in and out, that knows positioning in and out, that we can go to directly. Those are what the best customers are doing. They're not just leaving you on an island by yourself to figure things out. They're proactively sending you, any sort of collateral, one pagers, assets that can help you do your job better. They're doing those types of things. On the flip side, it's basically the exact reverse of that. It's, hey, we're only going to meet once a month. And when we do meet, we just want to see the numbers. We're not going to ask any questions outside of that. We're not going to collaborate. We're not going to jump on training sessions if we need them. These are very, very few and far between. More times than not, it's the organizations that just don't have the head count that end up falling into this bucket. You've got somebody who's very technical, who's created a great product or a service, and they just don't have the head count or the bandwidth to be able to really get granular with an agency. Those are tougher, and that doesn't mean they can't be successful. That just means that they do need a little bit more effort in the very beginnings to be set up correctly, and a little bit more attention in the early days before it can really go. And to your point, Amir, too, I think you're right. That month 4, 5, and 6, that's usually where you're going to start to see that consistency shake out. But you should still already have an idea that you're going to get there by day 30 to 45.
Yeah, I think people
That
see
doesn't
activity,
mean,
they see good
yeah,
stuff before, but I like to prepare people for
yeah,
4 or 6 because, I think obviously there's different programs that different maturity levels, but that tends to be that sweet spot where once they pass 4 or 6 months, they're staying with you for years to come. What do you ever find, like from the communication standpoint, that you ever have like more buyers that spend more time asking you? You spend more time asking them to pay their bill, and they spend more time asking you to get copies of the contract versus giving you feedback and doing role playing. Or have you ever seen that?
it does happen occasionally. It's pretty rare though. I don't think I run into that too often. Good
Yeah.
question though.
For anybody listening,
I've had it a
yeah,
couple of times. It's pretty rare.
I've seen it all the time. I've spent one time with a customer where like I spent more time, like if I consult, like charge $1,000 an hour easily, right? And I'm spending hours and hours chasing them for past due bills. They ask me nothing about their call script. I'm like letting them. I'm like, they have not asked me one question about the campaign, the writing, the emailing, and they can and they don't. And it's kind of weird. It's interesting because I'm like, if you look at Seth, like Seth has been working literally in the business for 10 years. He's been a trainer. Like his expertise is worth as much as the service. And sometimes I feel like instead of asking, questions about campaigns, they're wasting your time on other things, right? Versus being like, Seth, let's get on the call, let's go over the script. Like, do you find that clients that engage you more with the meat of the campaign find success? Or,
Oh, 100%. Yeah, 100% that. If they're asking the right questions and they're doing some of the legwork on their side as well, right? We just can't. You're not going to be that successful if your agency's on an island operating by themselves. So that doesn't mean you're not going to see some level of success, sure. But even if you're seeing some, imagine how much greater that would be if you were actually spending the time and really going into those extra levels as well. It would be even that much greater. So I think you're absolutely right, Amir. It's when they're focused on the important things, like don't major in the minors, right? Is the way I would explain that. Like you don't want to be an expert in all things not focused on your campaign, because what good's that going to do you at the end of the day?
yeah,
You really should be asking questions. And I would even go one step further to say, don't even focus on the areas that are really arbitrary, right? Like how many calls each individual SDR is making day over day. Is that an important metric? Sure, it is. But should that be the focus of every single weekly meeting? No, it should be, what feedback are we getting from the marketplace? How many engagements are we actually having?
yeah.
Conversations with real people? Because if that SDR is making 100 calls or 70 calls, it's a random number, right? It's how many conversations are they having, how many meaningful interactions, how many times are they getting your value prop in front of an audience? Those are the things that really matter.
Yeah, people. I think buyers need to spend more time talking about their offer and
Yeah.
do their potential customers find value in their offer, right? Because I guess sometimes it's hard to have those conversations because people are embarrassed or afraid of the answer, right? I think it's hard to hear, people don't like your offer. We got to change it up, and it's easier to say
Yeah.
you're not making enough phone calls, right?
And
Because
I would say
you
too,
have
and
to
I know
look in the
we,
mirror, right? I think it's the common
yeah.
theme of looking in the mirror and admitting that people don't want your pizza box. It's hard sometimes for people who spend their whole life building a robotic pizza box, right?
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think too that that's important also when we think about what the good ones do that the not so good ones don't do, is looking introspectively and saying, okay, what about my own sales team? Are we spending any time at all enabling them on how to appropriately field calls that were surfaced up by sales
Yeah.
development?
And are
Are
they
we doing
following
any
up?
coaching around that?
It's usually
Yeah,
the
are
common
they
thing. Are
following
they
up after the
following
fact?
up?
Yeah,
You know?
and that's not a knock necessarily on the sales team. It's just, hey, if we not enabled them, are they just expecting someone to show up to a call ready to sign a PO, or are they expecting to go in and build some rapport and do sales one-on-one stuff? Because this is very important, right, in terms of the success of the program and what direction it's going to take as well.
Yeah, that makes lots of sense. Tell me a little bit about your best customers right now. I know you guys service a lot of industries. I personally, off the top of my head, I know cybersecurity is something you crush it. So if that's the main one, we could dive into that. But let's make pretend we had a magic wand and we could pick the perfect customer, the customer that gets the results that they want, right? Because that makes them the perfect customer. And you had to pick one. Is it software or services?
Oh, it's definitely software,
Definitely software.
cybersecurity in
Why?
particular.
Cybersecurity.
Cybersecurity. Well, I think it all
I knew
boils down to
this already
data.
as cheating because I know you're my
Yeah.
cybersecurity guy.
Surprise! Can you believe it? He already knew it. But no, security I think is important because for us, that's always been our sweet spot. Security has always been our forte. We've been doing this for over 12 years as a business, and so by building our own proprietary database, this has really given us a leg up in terms of who's making decisions within these target organizations that buy security products. And I
Yeah.
think anytime you look at an agency, it's where they've had success before is where they're going to have success again. And
Yeah, like
so,
anybody listening to
um,
that, walk you through what Seth is really saying is that by specializing in cybersecurity, they have already contacted multiple times through multiple campaigns, ICPs in cybersecurity, and they, inside sales group, are collecting intent data on cybersecurity. And over 10 years, when you focus, your database becomes stronger than a Zoom Info because Zoom Info is everything to everybody. Inside sales is literally working actionable data on cybersecurity. So when you're working with an agency that focuses on the space, you're also getting the years and years of contact level record data, like the same way that I know Seth's cell phone for 7 years, right? And I know I can call Seth about anything shiny in the B2B sales agency space will have context to him, right? And that's
exactly.
and that's the same thing here. So you really want to focus on agencies that specialize because what specialization gets you is the data, the intent, right? And they're going to use that to get results on your behalf because that's the model, right? So that's a big thing.
Yeah.
And
And I
that
would say too, Amir, just to add on to that, it's always going to be the people, the process, the technology. Those three. It's always those three. It's always going to be those three, right? And I think if you look at the data, which is the part of the process piece, that's there. But then the people too. The SDRs are used to having conversations around security products, and so the next security customer that comes in, this is not foreign to them. They're not having to go relearn something new that they've never heard of before. Oftentimes, it's connected in some shape or form, and so this journey to knowledge becomes much easier, much faster for them to get up to speed and to be able to go out and have good conversations with your next best customer based on that as well. So I think that's important.
what about location? United States, Canada, UK. You got to pick one
Oof. For a customer or for
customer.
SDR or for a customer? Ooh. I would say our Canadian customers are always extremely friendly. But I would say some of my favorite customers I've ever had have been on our North American based
I
for
like
sure.
it. I like it. So if you're selling cybersecurity in North America, inside sales group is definitely worth the conversation. I'm like, that's we work hand in hand in a lot of those opportunities as well. What do you personally see as a big change in the industry in 2023 and beyond? Before we wrap this up, what are you looking out for? What's going to be
Well,
the theme of the year?
oh, the theme of the year. That's a tough one. Like your prediction, right? We're trying to
Yeah, we
predict some
want to get
things here.
your Nostradamus hat on.
Um, so I think automation is always going to be there to some extent, but SDRs aren't going anywhere anytime soon. I think lazy SDRs are not going to have a place in 2023. I think they've really got to go and do that extra effort, tailoring approaches, getting away from sort of canned everything's, right? Which unfortunately a lot of sales teams are doing this, where everything's automated and it's just a bunch of templates that they're sending out in a cadence-based fashion and just clicking auto send. You might as well just hang the hat up, because I think 2023 is going to really separate some
It's
of
a sad story for all
some
the
of the
companies
reps
that made those
doing this.
investments into Sales Loft Outreach and Apollo. It's like, hey, the number one thing you just spent a
Yeah.
lot of money on is probably not going to be working.
Well, I think I'm not speaking for everybody, but I can say for us, email reply rates are abysmally low right now,
Yeah.
especially templated email reply rates. If you're not tailoring it, if you're not putting in the extra effort to customize and do some of these pieces, it's going to fall on deaf ears.
Yeah. Good luck, Charlie.
So,
This has been great. I love the insights from you. Where can people find you if people want to contact you, pick your brain, talk cybersecurity sales? So where are you these days, Seth? Besides
yeah,
Tampa.
best place is probably on LinkedIn. You can find me right on LinkedIn, Seth Kinney, Inside Sales Solutions, LLC.com. Or you can find us right on our website, isaless.com. That'll lead you right to us. You can book time right there.
Seth, you're the man. I love working with you and Inside Sales Solutions. Everybody, thank you for listening in to the Transform Sales podcast. I'm going to be taking off to do some SDR work myself, because now I'm excited to sell. Take care,
Hey,
guys.
good luck, Amir.